everything under the sun as it pertains to sports betting, you name it. I'm NESN.com's Mike Cole, joined once again and as always by Ricky Doyle. The bad boys of podcasting are back.
Yeah, we are.
What's up?
Here we are. Not much. How you doing?
Better than you by the sounds of it.
I've never been better. Never been better.
Week 15 in the NFL. We'll get to that. It's a busy time of year, stressful time of year, a lot going on.
I think I'm just out on December now.
Why is that?
I just like the last few years. It's just I always tell myself like I'm gonna slow down and enjoy it a little bit, and then I don't know if it's just like the nature of our jobs or something.
I think it's the nature of. I don't think it's.
But no, because everybody goes through it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's the nature of.
You're packing more into in condensed periods. So.
Yeah, and like there's stuff. I think some places are probably different depending on like whether you operate on the fiscal year versus the calendar year. But like here, the review cycle, for example, or you start talking about this is specific to our line of work, like scheduling and things like that. People understandably want to take holidays, but there's you're
also like you're trying to account for like January and stuff.
Yeah, there's far too many balls in the air for what you would expect, and it kind of you would think after decade and a half in the professional world, like you would be like, I'm not going to let December sneak up on me. It always sneaks up on you. And that's not even getting into the personal, part of it where it's you're starting
that's
to,
what I mean that too. Like
you're starting to plan, you're starting to reckon with your mortality as it pertains to the previous year. You're working on gifts. You're doing all of that. It's am I going to be here
bad
on
weather
that day?
Here too.
The weather is raw. It is raw as it gets.
Dark, gloomy, slush.
It was
not good.
Okay, well, I didn't expect us to start. Well, maybe I did expect us to start there.
There will be a point, probably next week, maybe the following week, you'll get a nice light snow in my mood. This is great. I'll have my Santa hat on, my cookies, which I didn't have time to make, but I promise I'll bring them next week.
You a Christmas guy?
Yeah, I do. I enjoy Christmas. Yeah.
Theoretically, I was actually thinking about this on the way in today. Theoretically, so am I. I actually love Christmas. I like the idea of it. I like what Christmas was.
But I feel like I'm not getting as much as I should.
Bingo.
Out of it. Yeah,
exactly.
I feel like I'm leaving a little Christmas spirit on the table.
It's kind of like the thing I was telling you about yesterday, where it's just I put stuff off to the last minute, and then it gives me more and more anxiety. And so now I'm like, it's already we have 2 weeks, and I'm like, I haven't done anything. I mean, we have our house looks like the goddamn Santa's workshop. Like we go all out. Like there's lights inside, outside. We've got the Christmas tree. We're on path, but it's still like I haven't had a chance to like decompress, put my feet up, and watch Home Alone yet. Like it's just
then before you know it, Home Alone's taken from you.
Exactly. Right.
Well, maybe not. Maybe Home Alone's a bad example because you can watch that in July, but Elf is taken from you.
Is this just? I think this is growing up. This is growing up. Like this is it, right? Like you're just an adult. Like you don't get to do it the way you used to.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. Growing up.
How do we fix it? You just move up
so this is a problem too. Like take the entire month off, and neither one of us is in a position, especially nobody cares. But like it's just like even trying to take consecutive days off is tough because we're just in meetings or this.
And you look ahead. It's like once you get to Christmas week, it's just like everything from there on is a wash. Like you can't get any sort of real stuff done because everybody's just got different scheduling and stuff. So you gotta there's some moving parts. But so like next week's the real final week. And it's like that week everybody's trying to jam everything in.
That's the other problem too, is you're at the mercy of everybody else. So everybody's doing it. We're all guilty of it.
Yeah.
And so it just turns into a rat race.
It's just what it is.
That's and we're in a different there are jobs too where like you have to get stuff. Like my wife she edits medical documents and things like that. And like what happens is her team gets dumped all the reports because people are like, I got to get out of here, and they wait till the last second. So then, at least we don't have that. We're not holding on to like.
God bless her.
We're not waiting for somebody else to drop stuff on our laps, but at the same time, like sports happen on holidays more than ever before. So.
In the background, you got some important football coming up too. So it's like I want to devote some attention.
I can't even. That's the other. Yeah. So
I want to be able to enjoy some of this.
That's what we're here for, right? This is other than just ultimately complain about our issues. We'll get into week 15 of the NFL. I do want to
great schedule.
It's as good as it gets this week. So that's the other thing
after about as worse as you could get last week.
That was. So I was trying to figure that out last week. Was that just the schedule was bad? Was that? I mean, you bang two really good teams on Thursday night. So, there goes that on the Packers and Lions game. There was nothing to sink our teeth into locally because the Patriots were on a bye as well. And then, that 1 o'clock slate especially.
I don't remember
yikes.
There being a week that bad.
I feel like we say that a lot, but it was up there. Yeah.
But usually, by the time the games kick off, I have talked myself into, at least 1 or 2 games or something. On Sunday, it was tough too. That was a wasteland.
I had stuff going on during the first part of the day, and then my wife went up to New Hampshire with our son, so I had the house to myself. But I felt the need to clean and decorate and stuff. So as that great Rams Bills game was going on, I was kind of half watching it.
Yeah.
So I heard everybody talking about how great Brady was this week. I'm I guess so. I was too busy listening to podcasts and having one eye on it. So that was it did get saved by that game. That was a pretty good game. I heard.
Yep.
It was a good bookend weekend in that regard. I guess there was a few other games after that, but one of them was the Simpsons game on Monday night, the Cowboys Bengals. Did you consume any of that at all?
Just a couple minutes here.
So I did. So this is a part of the problem too, right? Is
those things I'm always interested to just see how it shakes out. But
just convenience wise, ESPN maxed out with they had the game on ESPN, they had the Manning cast on ESPN too. So you had to, when you start telling me I need to open an app.
Yeah.
I have cable still, so that's a weird notion for me. I hate doing that. It's even though I just literally push a button and speak in my remote, it could be any easier. But so I pulled it up right before I went to bed, so I caught a little bit of it. It was fine. I just don't know who it's for, specifically that one.
Yeah.
What's the target audience for The Simpsons in 2024?
I was going to say The Simpsons skews a little bit older than some of these,
so you're probably
Nickelodeon
watching the game,
games, for instance. So yeah, so you're right. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know.
Were you a Simpsons guy?
No. I never watched The Simpsons.
Me neither, really. I couldn't, though. My parents wouldn't let me. I mean, they got one itchy and scratchy. And
it's longevity.
No. It's 36 years or something like that.
I don't know why I was talking about The Simpsons recently, but even The Simpsons, who is it for?
Yeah. It's a good question. I don't know.
I feel like at the time,
groaning and whatever, the guys,
back in when we were younger, it was to your point, you said you weren't able to watch it. It was kind of edgy. Yeah. But now,
it's wild. I don't know. It's one of those ones where you just because I vividly remember they would get, it was a hard out on the Fox game, the 4:30 game to get to, you know what I mean? It would go straight out of Summerall and Madden into. Dun, dun, dun. It's just that was very, but now it just doesn't feel like that's part of.
And you've had different.
This is part of our death of monoculture type of thing too.
Yeah. Because you have had so many iterations of the edgy cartoon. In the years since The Simpsons came about.
Well, and also all of that edginess now exists on TikTok or YouTube. Yeah. So that being said, so it wasn't for us. I don't think it was for anyone. I have no problem with them trying new stuff. My biggest takeaway was I like the angle. We need more football. We were talking about this in the office the other day. When they do the national championship with the spider cam, when you're seeing it from behind the line of scrimmage up above and looking out as opposed to horizontally, you see more. And it's I watch that, even watching these dumb cartoons, seeing the way that the play has to develop, you're how does anyone ever do anything offensively? It happens so fast. You have to throw to a spot. There was the most respect I've ever had for Cooper Rush came on a play that he made late in the first half where he kind of stepped up in the pocket and threw in 6 different guys in the middle of the field. And I was watching him as he completed Bart Simpson or something.
I fell into that trap actually Saturday night watching the Georgia-Texas game where I accidentally put on the Skycast and cause I was just I was in the midst of a conversation, just boom, put it on. I just saw the 2 logos and then 10 minutes into it, I was just wait a second, why is there no commentary? Yeah. And it was because I had the Skycast on for the longest time. But I was oh, this is actually kind of cool.
Especially without commentary, it's you don't realize how the commentary and everything that goes within whether it's an ad, whether it's a camera change, stuff like that. Like, it feels like there's a lot more time. But when you're watching that angle, it's like there's not a ton of time snap to snap. And a lot of stuff has to happen. It's kind of wild.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm all for, like, those types of things.
Yeah, me
like,
too.
Yeah, like, ultimately, I skew towards just
I don't
traditional
end up consuming
game
a ton of it.
like,
right.
Like, I don't know. Maybe that's just, like, the cadence of it, or you're just so used to it. And I feel like so much of my sports consumption now is like while I'm doing something else. But yeah, when I actually sit down and I get like, you have these weird one-off things, I'm pretty in on it.
Yeah,
even though The Simpsons in particular aren't for me, I'm like, let's get a little weird.
I think we're kind of like really overshooting it with like the idea of what it was. So yeah,
the clips are kind of cool though too. It's just like, I don't know, it gotta
it's
my dumb brain. I'm just like,
I saw
Lisa Simpson running around.
I saw somebody. It wasn't even from the game, but like they photoshopped one of the. It might have been Mo.
Yeah,
it's
Mo,
like when you're
number one wideout. Like,
it wrecks your fantasy. It just like it was superimposed over like an actual NFL receiver. I don't know who it was, but it's him like making diving catches and stuff.
Crisp routes.
Yeah, it was like I was transfixed by it. It was awesome. We don't usually do college football here. Maybe we'll do a little bit more this year. Are you following college football at all this year with the bracket and things like that?
I feel like more so this year than years past, probably. But usually college football is not my thing.
Me neither, but I'm in. Like, at least this is the best. So going back to our conversation earlier, like this is the best time of year when they kind of maybe killed it a little bit, where it's like I miss having a halfway decent bowl game on like a Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock that I could bet on. So we kind of do lose out on it, but there's the idea that there's going to be these so what is it? Starts December 20th. So next week. I think December 21st is the big day. Yeah, there's 3 games, noon, 4, and 8 p.m. And I think there's an NFL game mixed in there too or something like that. We don't need to break it down necessarily this week. We maybe get into next week with kind of looking at our bets and things like that. I just like brackets, so I'm kind of in on it, but it's going to take some getting used to, I think.
I do feel like, and maybe this is just another thing where I've just tricked my brain into it, but it has felt like there's been at least one big college football game like every weekend this year.
Is that because of this though? As I heard somebody else make the same point.
That your eyes are on the college football playoff system.
Or does it feel like it means more? I don't.
Maybe because I guess like a few years ago before the playoff field is what it is, like the old structure, like you basically was like 3 teams vying for the right to become national champion.
Right.
And like so just like inherently every other game felt a little bit watered down, whereas this year it's like I don't know how many teams could conceivably win the title. Like there's like it's not one runaway unless you consider Oregon that. So it's just
which I mean maybe they are.
maybe but that's where like I don't know I gotta rely on the college football guys for that. Like but I don't know. It just feels like every week you look at the schedule and you're like, oh, nice little Saturday night game this week. And then obviously last weekend with conference championship weekend being the best of the best.
Yeah, I do like the idea too that we're gonna get home playoff games. Like I think that's kind of the whole thing, right? It is gonna be weird though that like the Rose Bowl isn't set. That's kind of a strange. So it's there. I get there's no great way to do it. College sports is just a mess. Speaking of that, Bill Belichick might be headed to North Carolina by the time we get done in here. Any takes on that before we get into our Week 15
this might happen while we're sitting here. We might have some breaking news.
I think it's not great for what we do necessarily. I think it's super interesting though. Like it's kind of sad in some regards. That I think it is a reflection that he's not getting any NFL jobs, and probably doesn't see any opening up because like Buffalo, Philly, like if those teams fall on their face early on, like you would think that McDermott and Sirianni could be, in trouble perhaps.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing the tea leaves don't necessarily indicate that if they are in trouble, Belichick would be an option there. So that's kind of sad. But like, I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting that a guy's going to basically nowhere on the college football map and is going to try to turn them around in a way that's like very screw college football. Like we're making a professional team here in Chapel Hill.
I was gonna say, do you think it would be more interesting of him landing this job, or if in some alternate universe he like became the head coach of the Ohio State or like somebody
right
perennial
now?
powerhouse. Yeah.
I guess Ohio State, but like the more interesting thing would have been Ohio State 10 years ago.
Sure.
Because like now I think, and I do think there's a thesis I'm working on is like Bill Belichick is about to absolutely ruin or destroy what's left of college football, and that ruin and destroy are bad verbs, So like I don't mean it as negatively, but like the McAfee thing the other day was eye-opening, where he's laying out like we're building a NFL factory here, and I know that's already what it pretty much is, especially with NIL and the portal and things like that. But I thought it was telling. He's like we're basically tailoring everything to turning guys into NFL players, and we'll use my connections. And like I get Deion's kind of done that in Colorado, but like taking the best professional football coach of all time and putting him in the college game at this point feels like a very significant watershed moment.
Yeah, no, it's unprecedented, right?
Yeah,
like it's just and it's something that obviously was not on anyone's radar whatsoever. So but like there is part of me that I do want to see him in the NFL though. Like that's why I can't fully buy into it.
Yeah.
Like I think if he had gone to another NFL team, had like a 2-year run where they made the playoffs, like it was just a very mediocre run, then I would be like, I'd be fully in on the college thing, because then it's really different. It's really off the grid. But there's still going to be a small part of me, even throughout this whole process, that is like, I'd like to see him on Sundays.
That's
like,
true. Sure.
I'd like to see him roaming the sidelines in Dallas and just being a part of that conversation.
Yeah, there's like the undertones of desperation and nepotism here that are kind of sour it too.
I think it's a regional thing too, because college football is not really a thing here. And so like, does he go to UNC and then that's kind of it? Like we don't really. Yeah, Belichick's not really top of mind for us in our day to day, and I miss that, because like I do think that for as grumpy old man that he is, like there's still something about Bill Belichick that he's a gravitational force, at least as it relates to this region.
I think it's more interesting that he's going to North Carolina than it would be him going to Jacksonville, though. Because I'm with you. I think I'd rather have him be in the NFL, but I want it to be somewhere that matters.
I think initially, but then I think when we get into the season, on Saturdays, am I gonna think to myself like, oh, I wonder who North Carolina is playing this weekend? And
it'll be more than it was last year.
Sure. But at least like if he's in Jacksonville Sunday, it's like I'm following that storyline throughout the entire season.
I think if he knows what he's doing, or people surrounds him with people who do, and it goes well, like we just got done talking about an expanded playoff in college football. Yeah. If it won't, especially with the way the conference championships are reinforced and prioritized and favored, like they could be in that thing pretty soon. And if that's the case, and he's playing on a Saturday night in January, that's a lot more interesting.
I think I just also like the idea of having like Bill Belichick on one speedway, the Patriots on another.
I know,
and them juxtaposed.
But like,
and just it's like a drag race.
No, I like
now it's just like
I like the idea of Santa Claus too. But like it's just. It's life happens, man. Like
it just didn't have to be this way.
Eventually, December's over. So it's
maybe it does, and that's why we've gotten to this point. Yeah, because it does need to be this way, and it's going to come to grips with it.
Yep, exactly. That is all life is really. The thing with his son's kind of weird though. Like, if that's an actual provision in his contract, like if I'm Steve, I'm like, this is weird. I don't like this.
You are kind of setting him up to fail too. Like I know you're setting him up for success, but at the same time setting him up to fail.
I'm a bit of a nepo baby.
Yeah.
My father was a district manager at Wendy's, and he got me a job when I was growing up.
That's
and
right.
I got to work some really plush shifts. They put me at the register because I could do math. Yeah. And I think people really resented me. So I hope Steve Belichick is going to be okay with that. Because if he ends up the head coach in waiting because your dad is the head coach, it's like, that's tough.
Yeah.
All right. What isn't tough is us in this program. We are soft as can be, but we are, I think, entertaining, at least to some degree. So if you want to reconvene with us every week, you can do that on Thursdays at the Nesson YouTube page, Nesson on Twitch, or our Facebook page. And if you'd rather just get this in your ear holes, you can subscribe to the podcast, rate, review, listen to it wherever you want, or wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple, all of those, run down the list, the gamut. It's all on the screen. So join us. All right, let's get into it. We're starting a little different this week. Let's start with our 1-unit plays. What's your 1-unit pick for week 15 of the NFL?
Week 15.
I know.
Crazy.
December's ending.
Just talked about an alternate universe. I was actually reading something earlier from the Action Network, and basically talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and how you could possibly fade them throughout the rest of the season. And one line that stood out in that being, in some alternate universe where every one-score result came out opposite.
I've seen that, yeah.
The Chiefs would be the worst team in the NFL at 2-10 and would now be in line for the number 1 overall pick.
I hate that graphic, but go on.
What do you hate about it?
They won the games.
Yeah, I know, but it's just for entertainment.
No, I get but I've seen people being like through a Patriots lens, or like we're actually not that far off. It's like
6 and 7 or something.
My problem with that is it discounts the moxie and the metal that it takes to win.
Sure.
Like there is some value in that.
I know.
That being
I agree
said,
with that.
they are not nearly as good as their record.
No, they're not. And it's just really. I mean, you could look at it however you want to look at it, like point differential. Obviously, tying into that, like their record against the spread. They're at 7 straight against the spread losses, despite being 6-1 in that stretch. 5-8 against the spread this season, despite the 12-1 straight up record. So they're just like every week there's something. They figure out a way to win. This week, the Chiefs are 4.5 point favorites against Cleveland. I'm going to take Cleveland. I'm going to take the Browns, take the points. Look, Kansas City probably wins this game. But, you look at some of the things that have plagued Kansas City to this point. With the cornerback position opposite Trent McDuffie, really haven't found a solution since trading L'Jarius Sneed. The offensive line might be a sneaky problem for him.
Tackle's not good.
So, I look at that and then look at what Cleveland does well. Their willingness at least to push the ball downfield with Jameis Winston. They can rush the passer, second highest pressure rate in the NFL. So I think Cleveland can do some things in this game that probably keeps it close, and then you get a Jameis Winston pick late in the game for Kansas City to steal another one score victory here. But as it relates to just this matchup, but Kansas City, they're just a bettor's nightmare this year.
Yeah.
And even just getting into some of the, looking ahead to Super Bowl odds, AFC odds, and stuff like that, there's really no value on them. But at the same time, it's like, is it going to surprise anybody if they're in the final 4-team mix or whatever? So tough team to figure out. But on a week-to-week basis, I've gotten to the point where if I see them laying anything more than a field goal, I'm taking a hard look at the other team.
Yeah, and they still might win the Super Bowl. Yeah, I think it's fair. We probably need to do some resetting at some point. It feels like we've been having this conversation with the Chiefs for a couple of years, 3 years now, and they are back-to-back Super Bowl champions. Where it's like you can't bet them.
It's amazing because there was a long stretch last year, probably even the year prior, where we had these conversations, but for some reason this year, like their roster and just the whole mix of it feels worse.
2006, 2009 Patriots.
Maybe they get there.
I was talking to my barber about this the other day. Yeah, if they get punched in the mouth in the divisional round, like the Patriots did in 2009 against the Ravens, it wouldn't surprise me at all. If J.K. Dobbins runs all over them or whoever, that's on the table. But if they win the Super Bowl, I wouldn't be surprised either. It's interesting. It's good for the sports, that's for sure.
I look at some of their recent games too. So in this stretch of what is it? It basically since the 7 straight against the spread losses, you had Vegas twice in there. It's been this weird thing that they're playing bad competition.
Yeah.
And coupled with the weaknesses, it's just they're impossible to get a read on.
Yeah. What's interesting too, though, is their best games this year have come against quality competition.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I guess San Francisco maybe it doesn't.
Well, San Francisco was without Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah,
and
San Francisco just isn't that good either. And so the Buffalo game was you're like, okay, it's still in there. They can put it. I feel like we're talking about a team that's all of a sudden like 3-10. And it's like, well, they're actually still pretty good. Yeah.
But they've caught in teams at really good times too, because like I said, the McCaffrey thing.
That's fair.
You get the Chargers when they last week they've got some injuries on the offensive side,
and Herbert got hurt in that game.
Herbert dinged up in that game. The Tampa Bay, that overtime game, that was without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Sure. The Denver game, blocked field goal at the end. Like, just get out of town.
This is a very familiar conversation across all sports. The luck versus, like, they have earned the benefit of the doubt in my mind, where it's like, if blocked field goal is coaching and execution, not luck. But if they sucked, you can. It's a completely unfair way of looking at it. But that's life.
So. So for me, like, they're a team that I would feel comfortable taking them, probably in a situation where if they do get into one of these playoff games and they're like, 2.5 point underdogs or something.
Yeah.
Maybe you take a long look at them. But if they're laying anything more than a field goal, then it's gonna be hard to get there. Either stay away or look to the opposition.
All right, my 1 unit play. I actually thought this was gonna be sharper than it is, and then I was kind of doing some research, and I think this is a square pick, but I don't care. I'm taking the Packers laying 2.5 points at Seattle on Sunday Night Football. I actually thought when I heard this line that it was a little inflated, and then the more I think about it, I actually like it. So I think my first thought was maybe the sharper move, and then I tricked myself into a square play. This is what we got to deal
with on a week-to-week basis.
But so I started digging into it a little bit more, and I think, what do you think about the Seahawks?
I've been pretty in on the Seahawks.
I think that's a shared take across the board. Beat who you play. Good for them. That being said, dig into it. You know who they've beaten this year? I will tell you. You don't have to recite off the top of your head. Denver.
Let me go to my Seahawks tab.
They've beaten Denver, New England, Miami without Tua, Atlanta, San Francisco, Arizona, the Jets, and Arizona again. There's not a good win in there.
No. So for me, it's total confirmation bias, I think. Because I liked them coming into the year. So now that, they're actually winning games, like that. See, I had a good read on them.
Sure, yeah, that's okay. Well, now we're talking about priors. So I was looking at one. Well, I almost dropped my microphone. One thing we don't mention a lot, but I need it for my argument, so I will, is ESPN's FPI index thing, which is basically expected point margin on a neutral field. I feel like it's kind of like DVOA.
Yeah.
But Packers are ranked 3rd in the NFL behind Detroit and Buffalo. Seattle ranks 18th. So you want to talk about confirmation bias? That was enough confirmation biasing of what I was thinking about like how the Seahawks haven't really beaten anyone. The Packers, you could argue, haven't beaten anyone either, to be honest. Like, they've played Philly, Detroit twice, and Minnesota, and they've lost all 4. That's not great, but they've been in all of those games, at least for the most part. The other thing with Seattle is, they have a top 10 defense by DVOA. They're number 9. But Green Bay, this speaks to the strength schedule, has played some tough defenses. The Lions are ranked 3rd. The Packers have averaged 22 points against them. Eagles ranked number 4. They scored 29 points. The Vikings number 1. They scored 29 points. The 49ers, this is maybe a little bit futzing with the numbers because they were probably on their downfall, but they were number 6. They are number 6. The Packers scored 38. Houston, number 2. They scored 24. And the Cardinals, a team that they are very familiar with, the Packers ran them out of Lambeau. That's a number 14th defense by DVOA. Seattle, meanwhile, despite being number 9, has been torched by good offenses. Detroit scored 42. The Niners scored 36. Buffalo scored 31. The Rams scored 26. The Giants, not a good offense, scored 29 points. That is by far the most points that they've scored this season against anybody. They did that against Seattle. I think this is going to be a tough matchup for the Seahawks, even with this game being in Seattle. Jordan Love has, knock on wood, decided to stop throwing interceptions, which has been a nice development for him. Since then, he's over his last 3 games, he's number 3 in the NFL by EPA. I think the Packers are good. I don't know if they're good enough to win the Super Bowl. I don't know if they're even good enough to beat a great team in the playoffs. They are maybe a year early still, but I like them on any field against anybody, and that, they have their schedule speaks for itself. They haven't won those games, but they've been in just about all of them. I just think that this is quite a considerable difference of talent here.
similar to last season, right?
Yeah.
Where back half of the year, Jordan Love cleans it up,
Sure.
and you're starting to see the true potential.
There's
of
a
that
thing
offense.
on Packers Twitter that he really excels during Toyotathon. So
Wow.
we are in the midst of Toyotathon. So Jordan Love's playing well again. Yeah, I think it's like a feel offense. And they kind of get it all going at the same time. I think they've done a pretty good job of like building around the running backs especially since they got rid of Rodgers, where it's like Jones was great last year. Like Jacobs been even better. And then as it gets later in the season, that becomes more important, especially in Green Bay, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I think they're built to peak at this time of year. So I thought they were good on Thursday night. Or at least competitive.
I'm with you though in the sense that like they still feel like a year away, right?
Like I want to bet right now. Let me bet somewhere that the Packers and the Chargers are going to play in the Super Bowl next year.
Yeah, like
that's
that.
my bet right now. Like
because it felt like the last year was the sort of the year of the offensive strides. This year they've made some defensive strides. You know, all the takeaways early on, like crafting a new identity on that side of the ball. And the next year,
now it's like
blend the two together,
a little bit on the margins with like free agency in the draft. Just nip and tuck, and you're good to go. So, all right, what's your? Oh, wait, before we get there,
hold that thought.
There's no better way to spend the month of December with us here at the Spread in Essence Football Picks and Sports Betting Podcast.
Toyotathon, Honda Days.
That's right.
All of them. The Hess truck.
It's always the Spread. Yeah, it's always the season for the Spread. You can watch on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts. Specifically, go check it out on Spotify. You can get all the Nesson vodcasts and podcasts there. So make sure you make that part of your listening habit every week here. We come out on Thursday, so join us. Speaking of like going Hess trucks, love Hess trucks.
Everybody loves them.
I have like a couple that I bought on eBay that I put up as like decoration.
They're getting a little pricey, but
that's what I was saying.
My mom gets one for my nephews.
My mom was talking about getting one for Teddy, and I was like, "Don't do that; it's too expensive." Yeah, she's like, "It's only $40." I'm like, "Well, it's a truck."
Yeah. I think she gets one for my brother too. My brother is like almost 50.
We'll take this offline.
Is what I'm saying.
So is the Spread. What's your 2-unit play?
You excited for the Desmond Ridder revenge game?
Yeah. Who does Desmond Ridder play for again?
He's on Vegas.
That's right.
And I'm going to take his former team, the Atlanta Falcons, laying 4.5 in Vegas on Monday night. This is just really buying the Falcons at their lowest point versus what I believe to be an inferior opponent. I am not high on the Falcons whatsoever, so their recent struggles have really come as no surprise in that regard. But, I mean, they have faced some pretty decent defenses at least. You look at their 4 straight losses, the 4 opponents by defensive EPA per play, Saints, 13th, but Broncos 1st, Chargers 6th, Vikings 3rd. So they're teams that can cause some problems. They've caused a lot of problems for Kirk Cousins. Vegas, much more vulnerable, 25th in that regard, especially vulnerable against the pass, 26th in drop back EPA per play. You look at the turnover luck, I think that's sort of an area where the Falcons have fallen short, is like they play these good teams, they start to make mistakes, and they get screwed for it. Now you're playing a Raiders team that is dead last in the NFL with a minus 17 turnover differential. So I know like you're laying 4.5 with a mediocre team on the road, but I think so little of Vegas and the operation that they're running right now that I'm willing to do this and willing to put my eggs in the Kirk Cousins basket this week. If you don't get it done this week, I think you start to seriously consider a quarterback change.
But they very much have a clear path to the playoffs, right?
Yep. That division, so the NFC South's wide open.
If they struggle, let's say they win, they cover, you hit, but he doesn't look impressive.
Yeah.
They're still in the mix. Can you make that move down the stretch at this point, or are you kind of pot committed?
I think it's a slap in the face not to.
That'd be a ballsy move.
I think you owe it to the rest of the team if you.
I guess it depends on what Penix looks like in practice,
and
too.
You're fighting for a. Well, that's the thing, right? Like he might just stink, and that's why they're not making a change. Like they might just see enough of him and be like, well, Kirk Cousins gives us the best opportunity to win games. In which case, I mean,
we're also extremely definition of pot committed. But one thing with the Ridder thing, that's tough tough hairline connection with. He doesn't have a great hairline, nor does Brock Bowers. So that's something to keep in mind this week when you're handicapping.
That's true.
So
yeah.
You get Brady to get in there and talk to him about the hair plugs or whatever.
It's magnified on Monday night when you're on the national stage.
That's true.
So people will be a lot of reaction on the socials.
Yeah. Well, I mean, luckily they wear helmets, so there is that. All right. Yeah. That's.
I'd wear the Guardian cap just to have an extra layer. Just make
what do you think of the Guardian cap, by the way?
I love it.
I love the idea of it. We need to go.
I love the optics of it too.
We need to go back in the go back to the design lab. It's.
You're like, whoa.
Speaking of like the Simpsons,
is this the Simpsons game?
It looks like a guy who's like, there's something wrong with the screen. I like the idea that they try to make them look like the helmets, but it's so clearly not that it just sticks out like a sore thumb. It looks like a sore thumb.
The baseball equivalent is way funnier though.
Yeah,
the big
pitcher's hats. Yeah,
which is just look like you took it off the bullpen cart.
Yeah. One of those big ass hats that you put on. I actually tried one of those on. I found one in the wild, like the big ass ones. They're pretty sick. I don't know
if I've ever seen one live.
I couldn't believe it. I put it on. I was like, Teddy, look. And he's like, what are you doing, dude? My team to play. I'm fading the Patriots. I'm taking the Arizona Cardinals 5.5-point favorites in the desert against New England. This is I know I do this once a week, kind of a narrative based pick. And there is some evidence to back this up, but there's not a lot of good vibes going around the Patriots. With how things have gone this year, I don't see them as the sort of team that gets off the mat after a late season bye, goes on the road across the country, and gives a team any sort of competitive effort. We are starting to hear stories circling about Gerard Mayo's job security. Greg Bedard, the Boston Sports Journal, said that he had team sources who said Mayo could be on the chopping block if they don't look good down the stretch, which is, by the way, if they're if they're making this decision on the last 4 games of his first season, that's not a great criteria either. I do think if they get their asses whooped this way to next way, is that even the rest of the way, it doesn't bode well for them, because I heard them talking about
that ass over. I gotta kick it one more time.
Look what Carolina's doing, right? Have you seen anything like that from the Patriots?
No, the Patriots is more like Vegas.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's much more parallels there.
So you're kind of playing out the string. I just I don't think they're. There's nothing that makes me believe Gerard Mayo is going to be great coming out of the bye. I think too. You look at the matchup, and this is it was the ESPN FPI. Or whatever it is. FPI, yeah. Strength of schedule this season. I know there are different metrics across the board. I've seen or heard that the Patriots have had the easiest schedule this season by DVOA. I might be wrong about that. But going by FPI, they have had the 26th easiest, or the 6th
but
easiest.
But if you flipped every one-score game in their favor, they would be 6 and 7.
That's a good point. They'd be in the Super Bowl. So they've played an easy schedule. They have not played a lot of good teams. By the FPI index, the Cardinals have played the toughest schedule in the league. That doesn't really mean as much to me as the fact that the Patriots haven't really, despite how bad they've been, haven't really played anyone.
Yeah.
So I do think Kyler Murray might be the best quarterback they've played so far this season. Tua, I guess, is in there too.
Yeah.
So
Stafford.
So my point is, Stafford's probably it. They haven't played a lot of good quarterbacks. This is a pretty strong offense. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for Arizona to score here. Tight end is one of the best in the league. Was McBride? I think he's first in receptions and yards, or second receptions over the last 6 weeks. Patriots have given up 10 yards receiver, or 10 yards a catch to tight ends. Kyler's going to be running around. They've struggled with that in the past. I just think this is a bad matchup, bad spot. I like the Cardinals to run away here. So,
you think Gerard Mayo gets another year?
Yes. I think there was another report, I think it was Fowler or Graziano at ESPN, said the bigger thing is they're going to look to try to get a veteran guy to come in. I think that's the more likely thing his coordinator, one of his coordinators.
My thing, it's
babysitter basically.
I don't know how you can look at anything that the Patriots have done this year, accomplished, and feel like there's been no progress. What do you hang your hat on? And also, this is a guy who was elevated quickly into a far more prominent role than he had. It's just, I don't know. If you're, I'm starting to think more and more that there might be some fire to the smoke.
There probably should be. Like, you'd rather.
I think maybe that's why I'm just talking myself into it. But like, if you're
cut bait and do it now, then
if you're Robert Kraft and like your legacy is this Hall of Fame thing keeps going, and it's just like you need to win games and you need to turn this thing around, and you have the quarterback in place, and you're trying to maximize that window. It's just like, what do you hang your hat on as being like, nah, I trust this guy. Why do you trust him?
Well,
why?
In that case, he probably shouldn't have been going out there shaking his ass on Thursday Night Football when they were playing the Jets, being like, I knew that we made a great decision with like still 15 games left to play.
I think it was Bedard that actually brought up a good point too. Like the fact that you have like a first year head coach already talking about the next season. Like that is jarring.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like, hey, maybe this weekend figure something out. So, all right. Yeah, I think I got one more. Oh yeah. Speaking of great decisions and making prudent decisions, knowing what you need to do over the course of a given year or season, there's no better decision than to listen to The Spread, Nesson's football sports betting picks podcast on the Nesson family of vodcasts and podcasts. If you're a vodcast person, you want to watch us every week, you can do that at Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. That's the Nesson handles for all of those. Or if you want to listen, like you and I, we're old school in that way, you can listen on Spotify, Apple, wherever else you get your podcasts. Yeah. All right, what's your 3-unit play before we get out of here?
Game of the year, right? So far, Buffalo, Detroit.
Is it
game of the year?
Yeah, sure.
It's gotta be.
Yeah, I guess
it's gotta be a potential Super Bowl preview.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I know.
Yeah, but I think that's a fair assessment of it. I'm gonna take the 1.5 with the Bills. I think that this is. It's kind of amazing that Detroit defensively has been able to hold up, not only hold up, but thrive in a lot of cases, although they've, maybe some of the shootouts they've been involved in, I think you've seen cracks. But this feels like a game for me that, like, if Buffalo jumps out, and I think they have that ability, Detroit first in the league in first half points per game, Buffalo tied for third. If Buffalo comes out, builds that lead, like, for me, the concern, aside from some of the coaching clock management things at the end of games to the Lions, is like, if you fall behind 14-0, are you able to claw back in? Like, can Jared Goff get you back into the game? Because we've touched on this numerous times throughout the season. Like, when everything's clicking, that offense is as good as any team in the league. But what happens when you throw a wrench into it? So I think this could be a matchup where that happens. I think that, Josh Allen's ability to make plays with his legs, especially. Detroit relies a lot on man coverage, blitz a lot. I think that's where Allen gets flushed out of the pocket, picks up those chunk plays to move the sticks. Now, my only concern is, like, did the Lions just show up and run it down their throats? Because Buffalo has its own problems defensively, but I think for a week, coming off of the loss, like, Buffalo still has a lot to play for. The number one seed in the AFC still well on its sights. So I'm gonna take the 1.5. But this is a coin flip game between, obviously, probably the best team in the AFC and the best team in the NFC.
I thought last week was a good spot to zig and zag against Buffalo, and I was right. Went 3-0 last week, by the way.
That was also, like, so many things went the Rams' way in that game, and like you needed a block punt to get home. So, like,
that's the way. That was.
No, but I'm saying, so, like, I look at that and I'm like, I think
correction. But my point is, like,
I think
now
Buffalo
you go
can
back
bounce
the other
back
way.
this week.
I think the number's too short. It's basically, you're telling me Buffalo's better on a neutral field.
They might be.
I just think they have the defense is an issue. I think but if it comes down to Josh Allen versus Jared Goff, I know I've picked on Goff enough in my life, but Allen's a dude.
This might be the week where you see that, like, you're reminded of, like, all right, the quarterback is the most important position on the field.
Yeah, and it helps to have one of the three best in the world right now. Yeah, I don't have a lot. I'll be watching that game. I will.
That's one you might want to get whatever it is you got to do out of there.
I was gonna say, it feels like a chili, something in the crock pot this week, so I don't have to make him dinner in the fourth quarter of this one. So, all right. my 3-unit play. I've been really searching the internet, trying to find, maybe somebody out there has the answer to this. Maybe you do. Trying to find Division III college football odds somewhere. Couldn't find any. So unofficially, my 3-unit play is taking whatever the points are with Springfield College this week, playing in the quarterfinals, the D3 quarterfinals. They're going to play North Central College. I'm not even entirely sure where that is. North Central, the number 1 team in the country, 12-0, just running through everyone. But the Pride might be giant killers. Went to Cortland last week. Beat Cortland, the number 2 team, the defending national champions. I like the Pride going up there and just running triple option all over their asses and really shortening the game and playing giant killer again. Couldn't find a number there, so I'm not an official pick. So my 3-unit play is the under in another small game you might have on your calendar this week.
If you do want to talk about the pass, I will mention my North Quincy High School recently had the Miracle on Hancock Street. That's true. That was number 1 on Sports Center.
That's true.
Huge Turkey Day game against Quincy. Came out on top at the end of that game.
Let's just say I think there's a chance Sunday morning we wake up and the Springfield Pride is on number 1 for 586 yards of rushing or something.
You might be right. So you're onto something.
But I'm taking the under. And again, another small game this week. The Keystone Battle. The Steelers, Eagles. This game's in Philly. I'm taking under 42.5. Eagles have some issues with the pass offense. AJ Brown's out here calling out guys. They can't really throw the ball. They've really relied on the running game. That could be a problem this week against that Pittsburgh defense. Digging into some of the numbers and the trends, ESPN did a really good job of running down some of this stuff. The Eagles are the only team that has called more runs this year than passes, and they are 4th this season with a 10.1% run rate over expectation. They want to run the ball. They still struggle to throw the ball efficiently. That's kind of tough against the Steelers. Also, the Eagles haven't really played a lot of defenses this year. They've actually played 2 above average defenses by DVOA, the Browns and Baltimore. And by EPA, it's been the same thing. They played the Packers and the Saints. I don't know. I think the offense is going to be kind of this is by far the best defense that they've played all season. The Steelers' defense is legit. That being said, I'm not buying the Steelers' offense either. They have come alive really since week 6. They're averaging 29 points per game, but that's against a run of teams that includes Vegas. It feels like Vegas is always in these things where we're trying to dump on other teams. Vegas, the Jets, the Giants, Washington, Baltimore, Cleveland twice, and Cincinnati. The best one in that mix is Baltimore. They're 13th by DVOA. That's a game in which the Steelers scored 18 points at home. Philly, defense number 4 by DVOA, number 2 by EPA over the course of its 9-game winning streak, and since week 10, number 3 defense. So they've just been good pretty much all season. No one has been better against the run, especially as of late, than the Philly defense. Can they make Pittsburgh one-dimensional? Najee Harris having a great season, but if he can't get it going, George Pickens, there's injury issues as well. Again, we're talking about December in Philadelphia too. The weather's not going to be bad, but it's not going to be great. I think this is a just bang the rock, bang your heads into each other, and come away with a 21-17 game. I don't know who wins it. Probably, I don't know. This is a great game. I'm excited for this.
I looked at this and thought about taking the points with Pittsburgh.
I think that's the only play
right
just
now.
because
there's enough of a track record to where this is the type of game Pittsburgh gets up for, and underdog role of north of a field goal.
Yep.
Like, this is the classic Mike Tomlin spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, go in there.
Yeah, 100%.
So I would maybe lean towards Pittsburgh with the side here as well.
Sneaky huge week. You kind of really quickly alluded to it in the AFC with
Denver and Indianapolis.
Yeah,
is another
Buffalo's
big one.
got to go to Detroit. Obviously, that's a tough spot to win. If they lose and if Pittsburgh can go in and beat Philly, all of a sudden, there's a world. It's not a big one. There's a world though in which the Steelers, especially because they have a Christmas Day game against the Chiefs, they could be the number 1 seed. We owe them an apology. We dumped all over them earlier in the year.
And I think you can still get that at 18-1.
I was just
or
about to look
something
it up,
along those lines. So it's one of those things where
get it now.
The math tells you there's value there. Now it's do you fully buy into the Steelers? Because I still have I'm still hesitant, and it's because totally I don't know if that offense is as good as like you said. I don't know how sustainable the quarterback play is, and especially
it's been
and
good.
especially when you start losing weapons like George Pickens.
Yeah, that's.
But it is what it is, right? And they're 10-3. in a good division too. So it's not like they're not 10-3 in the NFC South.
No, that's that's a good point. It's just God, Tomlin is such an interesting character because like I do think he kind of stinks in game. And I guess that's unfair to say, but like maybe that's just because I've seen him get pantsed so much by Belichick. That was earlier in his career, but the institutional foundation is so good.
Everything else
unreal
outweighs any of his in-game shortcomings at this point.
100%.
Like the fact that they're year over year, their floor is so high.
Have they considered like I don't know a talented quarterback at some point though? Like
it's always a missing piece, right? It's like if you just get, and now maybe you have one. I don't think so.
It's not for the long term. But yeah. Anything else?
No. I think we got to go. We got holiday things to do.
Yeah, we got holiday things to do. So that's Ricky. I'm Mike. This is The Spread. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you again next week. Enjoy the games. Go Springfield. See ya.